Scott with SJWellfire.com. Final Days Report, episode 480. This vidcast we're calling, this is just a multifaceted takedown on so many fronts. Lucifer has but a short time. We'll get into USA takedown, false flag for more surveillance, banning of free speech, the agenda. The robot agenda that we talked about last week is right in your face, folks. Who can make war with the beast? And oh, by the way, USA Inc. is insolvent, according to Fortune magazine. And we'll get into how they're dismantling oil. That is a total script hitting USA soils. Americans are so asleep. It's a scam. You don't even need oil to drive a car. We'll get into that. This is going to be a long VCast because there's so much going on. As I said, Lucifer has but a short time. Now, the first story I want to cover, this is a little bit late, but the first lady walks out with a robot. And the one thing I just want to bring to your attention, I went back and looked at when she walks out with Trump in a similar fashion. She is subservient to Trump. And this is crazy. She walks behind this robot. And it's even worse. I'm not going to play the whole thing. Right before the robot sits down at the table or comes in the second room with all these so-called dignitaries, she just stands and lets the robot take the stage. What they're telling you is AI runs the world. As we get into this podcast, I personally think artificial intelligence is the playbook to dismantle the world. All right, Russia, we're going to hit your oil port here. USA Inc., we're going to hit this oil field refinery. It's a playbook because they don't even need oil to run cars. We'll get into the who, what, when, where, why, and how. The evidence is over the top. This is a script. It's a systematic takedown of the world that AI will run. So watch this video. She's just subservient, telling you who the leader is.
Ladies and gentlemen, the First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump.
Gave me the creeps. All right, it gets more nefarious. And this feeds the last podcast that we talked about where they're going to have robots with synthetic skin. You're not going to know what's real. The deception is going to be so over the top. Check that last VCast we did. Because something nudged at me with this TSA shutdown and this right-left battle where TSA workers aren't getting paid, quitting on the job, and there are major backlogs. People are pissed. Order out of chaos. So I had a hunch that they're launching robots to take TSA's place. And sure enough, Business Insider, Silicon Valley Airport tests Jose, an AI-powered robot, to ease travel snares. This reminds me of the shoe bomber that was put on a plane by a strange man. And then all of a sudden we have the technology that zaps you. This reminds me of 911 and that false flag that gave us Homeland Security. So the article goes on to say, and these are the article's words from Business Insider, this robot, Jose, AI-powered robot that, oh, by the way, is a spy system, will spy on everything and feed it to artificial intelligence, this omnipresent Luciferian god, single-handedly ran his own gate. So they didn't put this robot as an agent, but they're priming it. Within the article, some TSA workers have stopped coming into work due to the government shutdown. So they're priming you, slow boiling you to accept a robot at an airport because it'll get you through the line faster. We are such sheep. The pilot test launched on Tuesday amid travel chaos. Really? And it's there to assist travelers. No, it's there to spy on you. I knew it. This is a plan by the right and left. Break from your right, left. It's we the people versus the Epstein class. All right, USA Inc.'s bankrupt. Americans are getting played so hard. This is from Fortune magazine. The Treasury just declared the USA Inc. is insolvent. The media missed it. So then what are they doing? So if USA Inc. is insolvent, then we have false flags, multiple false flags that are going to be blamed on different people. Mystery drones spotted over military base where Rubio and Hegseth reside. Oh no! Blow them out of the sky. Iran's threats on U.S. soil, sleeper cells, lone wolf, cyber attacks, and eerie number codes. And I had a dream. I've talked about it multiple times. I don't know if they were Mexican drug cartels. I don't know if they're illegal aliens. I don't know if they're Muslims. One of those three attacked train stations and did horrible, horrible things. And another option, a fourth option, I guess, could be illegal aliens coming in, getting trapped by the CIA because there was a whistleblower that ran to a hospital and said the CIA are training them to do false flags and horror on American soil. Why? Because USA Inc. is bankrupt. The bankers don't care about countries. It's insolvent. They need to steal your money. They need to get you on a digital ID 2020, to tax you, to know where everything goes on the blockchain. So expect false flags. And they're priming false flags with these mystery drones spotted over the military base, with these sleeper cells. Have no fear. This is a playbook. I had a video that went viral on TikTok where a CEO explained how he filmed 1,000 Chinese military-age soldiers walking in a straight line, invading the United States, 1,000, one location, one night. We're being invaded. It's allowed to happen. So they need to prime us and soften us to strangle us. A poll in every city. You can see this a mile away. Why? They need to bring on the 10 kings to consolidate power and this AIB surveillance state system. And it's getting more interesting. People are so asleep on this. New York Times, Iran's attacks forced U.S. troops to work remotely, talking about the Middle Eastern bases. The New York Times reported that as many as 13, there's the number 13, U.S. military installations in the region have been rendered almost uninhabitable following Iran's escalating counterattacks. India's TV news satellite imagery, verified video evidence, and official statements identified at least 17 damaged U.S. military, diplomatic, and air defense sites across the region. Several installations were struck multiple times with communication nodes, radar systems, maintenance facilities, and troop housing repeatedly hit. Now, this reminds me of Nancy Mace's cryptic tweet where she's not going to support troops on the ground after a briefing. Did she see all these military bases destroyed? And you think about it, with modern warfare of drones and missiles, bases are probably obsolete anyway. But this is a meat grinder that's going to happen. And it goes on to talk about how other bases in multiple countries have been supposedly hit. But I thought this was interesting. The Pentagon dispersed thousands of troops across temporary locations, with U.S. forces conducting operations from hotels and temporary sites. And the damage estimates are over the top. I took the lowest one that I could find of 800 million in damage to these bases in the first 2 weeks alone. Oh, they want to kill the Christian Zionists, your daughters, anybody that has American blood. This is a takedown. Don't let your sons and daughters fight for the greater Israel project. And this isn't new news, but you need to think about this, how Kissinger dismantled the United States manufacturing. It's all a script. USA, according to the Wall Street Journal, races to accomplish the Iran mission before munitions run out. This reminds me of just the stories we've heard of with Ukraine. And it's hard to fathom with $1 trillion budget that Trump's pushing for. I've heard now they're pushing for 1.5 trillion, and we're running low on missiles. Really? But another witness to this, reports from the South China Morning Post and Reuters, indicate Washington could only have weeks or months of certain rare earth inventories available for defense manufacturing if supply disruptions deepen. Rare earth elements are embedded throughout modern military systems, from missile guidance and drone propulsion to radar systems and fighter aircraft electronics. We're getting played. I personally think, as USA Inc. gets destroyed, I've had multiple dreams, China, Russia, Cuba, and others have as well. As China wins, expect this mark of the beast social credit score model that the World Economic Forum loves. And let's say I'm wrong that this is a script. I don't think it is, but let's say I'm wrong. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor because of the oil embargo. USA Inc. cut China off. And now all of a sudden, China and Asia and now Europe, as we get into it with Russia, they're going to be choked off. So whether you believe this is a script or real, history rhymes. We're getting played. And we're getting played to send your Christian Zionist soldiers to die. Zemar said to warn cabinet that IDF will collapse in on itself amid manpower shortage, times of Israel. So who's going to fight the battle? Your sons and daughters. And End Times Headlines has a lot of good articles, and they're a Christian Zionist organization. They're slowly waking up, but they're totally duped, in my humble opinion, on the Schofield deception. And he did a poll, and he erased it, because blessed are the peacemakers. 70% of Christian Zionists on his channel support the war. 30% don't. This is unbelievable. This is going to come home to roost. So the genocide in Gaza they support, it's disgusting. For those of you who are not Christian, this does not represent a Christian. I have nothing to do with this war. The promises to Abraham and Israel were already fulfilled in the Old Testament. I had that dream of people from the Middle East jumped into the sea and walked up through Saudi Arabia to the promised land. 2 lines, people from Africa and people from the Middle East. I am not buying the Schofield script at all. At all. And we've played, I'll see if I can find the video of a famous rabbi saying, we got to get Muslims and Christians to kill each other off. You're getting duped by the woman of the book of Revelation. Jerusalem sits on 7 hills. Jerusalem controls the world. And I do think the world will turn on Israel. We need to pray. People get saved. That is our job. We need to be in Ephesians 6 for spiritual warfare. The armor of God, sharper than a 2-edged sword. Let's use it. Get your house in order, my friends. It's getting and moving fast. But this group does not represent me. There's a new covenant. Let's continue down the propaganda of a false flag, Laura Loomer, who's part of the tribe. And anybody that takes a source from the CIA, you know that's deception. You need to think about Vault 7 and WikiLeaks with all their capability for hacking everything. Think about how the CIA and our government runs the drugs. CIA created MK Ultra to destroy people's minds, split their personalities. This is not good. Destroying countries for businesses. It's wickedness. And they're just the middle manager reporting up through the bankers. But let's read. CIA source tells me the CIA has hard evidence that Turkey, and more specifically the Erdogan administration, has specifically directed spending for podcasters to undermine the Trump administration's Middle East agenda. Laura went after Tucker Carlson. Is that a false flag? I don't know. But they want to ban podcasters. They want to ban free speech. The CIA has evidence of this Turkish funding going to at least one female podcaster. I bet you I know who she is, because she's very prominent speaking against Gaza, and at least one male podcaster, probably her partner. Turkey is the largest financier of the Muslim Brotherhood. And I wish I could find the video. I didn't save it. They're priming Israel to go after Turkey for the Greater Israel Project. Already primed by the Israeli leadership. This guy was speaking, prominent leader in Israel, in their government. And he said, we need to look at Turkey next. And nobody clapped. This is a scam. And Laura's going after free speech. They're going after free speech. We've played podcasts where even Trump said, free speech, we need to go after it. We need to have AI monitor the net. Because I wasn't on the Epstein plane. Really? Give me a break. Going after free speech with Charlie Kirk and that assassination? No. When you ban somebody's free speech, it's going to come back on your head. So expect false flags, my friends. If the CIA called me, I would say thanks, but no thanks. I'm not going to actually give your intel, unless they were a God-fearing Christian that I knew. Now, the other thing that we've talked about, World Economic Forum and their video with the digital pandemic that they erased because it seemed like a false flag. And they're blaming Iran as the boogeyman for all these digital attacks. Could they be doing it? Maybe. But again, remember the CIA, Vault 7, WikiLeaks, all their hacking tools where they can hack you and make it look like Iran did it. Iran lashes out on digital front as attacks go global. There are a lot more attacks happening that aren't being reported. Iran's cyber response creeps across the globe. I thought Trump said these were inferior, dumb people. I mean, this is priming us for a digital pandemic that will push for ID 2020, where you can't do anything without your biometric papers, please. Could this happen? Absolutely. But it's a plan to make you comply, to set up the mark of the beast system where you can't buy or sell. And again, remember, if USA is bankrupt, they have to get your money on the blockchain so they can tax your wealth, so they can cut you off. Stable coins, they can literally take your money. Central bank digital currencies, programmable money. You can't spend your money 10 miles away from your home. You had too much meat this week. Carbon tax system, social credit system. You see how this smells? It smells like a rat. Let's continue with Laura Loomer and her CIA propaganda. Soon there will be a massive Islamic terror attack in America, and the perpetrators will likely have financial ties to podcasters. There she is again, going after free speech, and those who are sowing discord for foreign nations in America. I predict there will be many casualties, and only then it may be set in that people have been conned into supporting a terrorist psyop to distract you from the threat of Islam, while the enemy plotted to destroy our country from within with blotted conspiracy theories. So they're talking about AIPAC owning both sides of the political spectrum. So here's what we can expect. It will likely be 10 times worse than 9/11, and it's going to trace right back to the woke right in some way. There she's trying to say left, right. I just have this sense. Well, she can have her opinion, but we just established that she has connections to the CIA. And I go back to she's blaming podcasters. This is a free speech operation. Operation Northwoods, all over again on our soil. And again, China's allowed to invade our borders as well. So we'll see. Drug cartels, Muslims, who will do the false flag? Those illegal aliens that are being trained by the CIA that we talked about, that story. At the end of the day, this is a planned takedown. They're setting up massive trauma for you to beg for control in a surveillance poll in every city. Now, it even gets more deep. I want to play a video of Whitney Webb on the Jimmy Dore show where she goes and talks about the ultimate domestic terrorist, our former MAGA and awake Christians. And this was under Trump's first administration. Let's play this video. I thought this was mind-bending. Check out the entire video as well, because she goes over the AIB system in Ohio with Epstein and his crew and Wexner. That is mind-bending. This fascism. She talked about how Ohio Jobs, I think she called it, basically gets the tax revenue from alcohol, but doesn't get audited at all because they're a private organization. They're testing the B system in Ohio. But let's play this. This was interesting.
What do you make of Joe Kent?
Yeah, so with Joe Kent, he's a intelligence officer and top CIA guy. I think a lot of stuff is going on right now, and I'm not exactly sure how I feel about it. But I think people should be careful in trusting former, quote unquote, spooks who come out of nowhere and are saying what you want to hear right away, because a lot of times what happens is that these figures will do that to build up trust with the public, and then they'll misdirect you somewhere else if you're not careful. So I would advise vigilance and critical thinking, which is often in short supply, but should not be, about that figure in particular. But
so you think there might be some kind of a long game plan with Joe Kent?
Oh yeah.
I've heard this argument, and that don't take him as face value, that they're just setting him up to be the next Trump or JD Vance or something, and then he's going to do all the horrible thing. So
they could. It's very possible, but I don't know how it'll go. Let me give you an example of why I'm really skeptical of him.
Okay.
So when Trump was, I encourage people to go back and look at the first iteration of the Trump administration to understand what's happening now. And since my career in journalism began during Trump's first term, I thankfully remember a good amount of it. So about a year before the January 6th events, there was this DHS official, and this is the Trump administration, Elizabeth Newman, I think her name was. She was basically saying, there's going to be a domestic terror event. We can see it building, but we can't quite stop it. It's another 9/11. Oh, no. If only we had more surveillance powers and whatever, we could maybe stop this other imminent 9/11, whatever. And so basically in that hearing, it was a hearing where she was testifying. Top officials from DHS and other intelligence agencies were basically painting who is the up and coming domestic terrorist profile in the United States. What Americans are domestic terrorists. And so basically, I really wish I could remember the specific name of the hearing to direct people to that, because it is on C-SPAN still. But basically, the profile they gave were anti-Semitic Trump supporters or anti-Semitic right-leaning populists. So,
I mean, is that wild? Reminds me of Revelation 12. Ultimately, Lucifer's going to go after Christians. And this reminds me of Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson talks and speaks a lot of truth, but then all of a sudden Laura Loomer calls him out as an agent because he reached out to have an interview with somebody from Iran. And we know Tucker worked for the CIA. Many speculate he had a Kabbalah bracelet on, but he said no, it was a gift from his dad. Has he converted to Christianity? God only knows. He said he had a demonic attack, so I'll give him some credit there. But I watch Tucker because Tucker is getting persecuted. They're framing Tucker up. They're framing him as somebody that is anti-septic, just for calling out the war in Gaza and the genocide. So you're anti-septic if you call out genocide. No, you're just calling out what it is. We did a podcast on the Orthodox Jewish community in New York having a massive problem with pedophilia. This was Vice News I quoted. It's not anti-septic. It's just quoting the news. It's quoting facts. I pray people get saved. So here's why I really watch what Tucker has to say. Is he had somebody on his podcast that did an amazing job talking about the pre-trib rapture lie and the Schofield Bible doctrine. And I think he had a position of, I'm pretty sure it was post-trib rapture. He said, you got to be prepared to give your head. And it was an amazing testimony. He did an awesome job. And again, he was a country rap singer from Big and Rich. But then the next podcast, I kid you not, Tucker had somebody on from the tribe pushing Noahide laws. And if you're not familiar, the Noahide laws is law in the United States being pushed in schools at an alarming rate. States are adopting it at an unprecedented pace, getting hoodwinked because they have no clue. The sub-law says if you worship Jesus Christ, it's off with your head. That fits the book of Revelation perfectly. You're not getting raptured out of here, my friends. Read Matthew 24. It's after the tribulation. In Revelation, it talks about Jesus coming back as a thief in the night after the mark of the beast has been implemented. So is Tucker's role to set you up? I don't know. I pray on it if I share his things because he covers a lot of great things. But at the end of the day, they're building a system that will persecute those, warning about the woman of the book of Revelation, warning about Noahide laws. And you know who controls you, who you can't talk about, period. And I warned you with Trump and his fake lawsuits, the fake persecution before he took office, because they were painting him as a Messiah figure. This is moving so fast. So will you be anti-septic? Will you be an enemy of the state if you don't want your sons and daughters to die for the whore of the book of Revelation, the woman of the book of Revelation? Will you be on the list? Will you be an awake Christian or a former MAGA supporter? Trump's turning on you, my friends. All right. This plan is multifaceted and it fits SEAL 3 perfectly. This oil takedown, this oil false flag. I think it's a script. But fishermen stop fishing, can't afford diesel. Food crisis begins from unshadowed. Not many people covered this. The fire in Nebraska. I used to drive a lot in Nebraska to take a flight. 95% of our grazing land is gone. Ranchers share impact of Nebraska wildfires. We did a podcast, Why the War on Beef, all the benefits of beef, the wealth of beef. And then, oh, by the way, in Iowa, another chicken farm.
Hawkeye Pride Egg Farm employs more than 130 people here, making it one of the largest employers in the area. And in Corwith, where just a little over 260 people live, that means many families are directly connected to the plant. So when flames tore through multiple buildings Thursday night, it quickly became something the entire community was watching.
Remember how they were destroying the food supply chain? Manufacturers getting hit with airplanes, supply chains, grocery stores, markets. That was my industry, was food marketing. And I used to read the trade journals, even manufacturing operational trade journals, because I worked at some manufacturing plants overseeing the entire business unit. I remember reading maybe a fire once a year, and then all of a sudden we're up to hundreds. Now they're taking you down. Now the big part of this trauma, inflation, they're destroying this to push their fake beef, fake chicken. It's a great business model. Destroy your competition and then have an option. But also, the last podcast we talked about India, where you can't get your food stamps unless you have your digital ID. So are they trying to make food so expensive that you can't pay with cash? That's where it's headed. Now, here's why I think this is an AI planned takedown, a script. Not many people know this. Some of my normie friends, I was telling them, wow, the Valero refinery plant in Port Arthur, Texas, 450,000 barrels a day is on fire. And the number one port in Russia was hit by drones from the Ukraine. And then Russia just announced it's not going to export oil April 6th, primarily to Europe. So Asia's suffering. Europe's going to suffer. It's a plan. And it's coming home to roost. So the big question is why? Well, what's the strategy? And again, we've covered the Mexican president, all the people that died so she can win with her ponytail with The Economist before we even know who the woman is with the ponytail. Well, it was the Mexican president, so you're watching a script. But this is from Mexico News Daily. Looking to an all-digital future, Steinbaum, part of the tribe, plans to eliminate cash at the pump and the toll booth. I can see the toll booth, so you zip through. But the pump, the gas station, why does she need to eliminate cash at the pump? Well, because they want to control it. There'll be allocations. It'll be part of this digital payment system. Oh, this is so evil. Our goal is to make digital payments mandatory for fuel and tolls this year. Through the models we are developing together with the banks, this is intended to help strengthen accessibility digital payment methods to enable us to drive the country's digitization forward in many other areas as well. Yeah, to buy food. This is the mark of the beast system. Period. Now, the last VCast, we talked about how this is lockdown 2.0. We gave some examples, but it's a total script. It's totally lockdown 2.0. I think this is smart city priming. This fits that digital control with your money. I think they're setting up fallen angels or the Antichrist to maybe launch free energy, run your cars on water. That's been invented already. That's the savior. Join for the mark of the beast system for this new tech. But it's evil. This is a script. This is a plan. This is an organized takedown.
That the IEA chief basically said about energy lockdowns. I mentioned that the IEA chief basically said the shit is hitting the fan. Everything's falling apart. And he just published Lockdowns 2.0, an energy lockdown playbook. They released a 10-point plan over the weekend telling governments to restrict driving, ground flights, force remote work, and ban gas cooking. They called it sheltering from oil shocks, writes Aaron Day. Here is the plan. Number one, they are recommending alternating driving days based on your license plate number, odd plates on Monday, even plates on Tuesday, and countries are now already implementing this. They are recommending mandatory speed limit reductions on every highway, not for safety, but fuel rationing by another name. You can still drive, just slower and less often. Number three, avoiding all air travel where alternatives exist. They didn't define what that actually meant, but the ambiguity, writes Aaron Day, is the feature. It lets regulators decide after the fact whether your trip was essential or not. Non-essential versus essential. Does that ring any bells? Here's another one. Switch from gas cooking to electric. The IEA is now telling you what appliances you can use in your kitchen. And the same agency that published net zero by 2050 is calling now for thermostats to be capped at 19 degrees and a ban on new gas boilers. This is not new, it's accelerating. And then work from home if possible. The guidelines mimic 2020 when they locked down the world and called it public health. In 2026, they're locking down movement and calling it energy security. The template is identical, writes Aaron.
They have to control your travel. We've been warning about that for years, and they're going to do it with technology as well. Check out some of our previous podcasts, how they can shut down your car. It's evil. Now, here's why this whole thing is a scam. Stan Meyer ran a car on water. Christian man, worth millions, had his own trucking company. And this is the best video I could find, but I've seen this technology with other videos, but I think it's suppressed on YouTube, where they were heating their home, turning water into HHO and fuel. It's a scam. Think of Tesla, the free energy. That's how I somewhat woke up early days, is the suppression of technology. I remember seeing people have these basic free energy devices with magnets in a circle. It was like a open clamshell. And then when they put the clamshell together, it was a generator. They could power 20,000 homes with some of these mega generators. And then I was thinking, well, what happens when the magnets lose their power? And they're like, you just re-energize them. Free energy. Prophecy Club, he covered a story with an invention that was 80% efficient, and he was arrested. All his money was stolen. Think of all the patents that are suppressed. I'm just not buying any of it. Is that why they're burning this down? They're going to launch these new solutions?
Water has always been considered a precious commodity, but Stan Meyer's invention may make it even more valuable. He has developed what's called a water fuel cell. It has taken the place of his old gas tank. The water fuel cell breaks down water molecules into oxygen and hydrogen. The hydrogen is used to run his dune buggy.
I don't care if you use rainwater, well water, city water, ocean water. If you don't have any fresh water, go ahead and use snow. If you don't have any snow available to you, they use salt water because there's no adverse effect to the fuel cell.
Meyer started working on this project 4 years ago. He's not a scientist. He isn't even a chemist. In fact, he never graduated from college. Myers was determined, he says, to design something to protect this country from oil embargoes.
And we have calculated that if we take the dune buggy from Los Angeles to New York, we would roughly use 22 gallons of water.
The Pentagon flew a lieutenant colonel in last week to look at Meyer's invention. There's talk of possibly using it in the Star Wars defense program and to run army tanks. Myers is currently perfecting a water fuel cell for cars. It will cost about $1,500. He says it won't need any maintenance, and you won't have to replace it.
They took him out. And I remember researching this. There were about 5 people around the world that figured this out. All of them taken out. Arkansas-sided. And then here's an example. I don't like that it's AI driven, but I remember seeing somebody heating his home with the same principle.
Professor in Atlanta, USA, has just announced an impressive invention. A stove that does not use gasoline, oil, or gas, but only uses water to create fire. This stove operates based on the principle of separating water, H2O, into two components.
So it's a scam from the pit of hell. All right. This Iran war, I want to give both sides. Are we just watching a script, or is Iran a thorn in the side of the mark of the beast Epstein class rulers? Now, the first case, hey, this war is real because the Central Bank of the Islamic Republic of Iran, CBI, also known as the Bank of Markazi, it was established in 1960 and it was fully state-owned, operating under the authority of the Iranian government. So it's not a private bank like the Federal Reserve Bank. Iran has been under the U.S. and international sanctions since 1979, with the Islamic Revolution intensified after the nuclear program disputes. That the whole nuclear issue is interesting if you dive down that rabbit hole. But Iran is excluded from SWIFT, the global interbank messaging system, severely limiting its ability to transact internationally. The CBI has been directly sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury, making it effectively cut off from the dollar-denominated finance. This is what got me. Iran does not participate in the IMF lending program in any meaningful way, but it works with Russia, China, and others. So if this is real, if this might just be Luciferians infighting, are they a thorn in the final mark of the beast system and must be taken down if this isn't a script? And I'll give why I think it's a script in the next slide. But this video explains it.
Of course, there's so many reasons for this, and here's a few.
It was never about Iran. It was always about control. Iran doesn't have a Rothschild central bank. Let that sink in.
Of 195 sovereign nations, Iran is one of 4 countries that has no central bank.
That means they print their own money, they don't have to borrow from the IMF, and they're not trapped in the global debt. They trade oil outside of the US dollar, control Hamas, so $1.2 trillion of oil runs through every single year.
You understand the lay of the land in the Middle East and something called the 3 Cs: control, currency, and commodities. You will begin to realize that Iran is an incredibly powerful nation.
Not because they're dangerous, but because they're a threat to the system.
The largest supplier of oil to China. Iran has no nuclear weapons as recognized by the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And finally, it has no central bank.
Global debt is maxed. Banks are failing and fiat is disappearing. So they create a conflict and create a solution. CBDCs, digital ID, and programmable money.
Yeah, Iraq dropped the dollar in 2000. Saddam Hussein found in a spider hole and hung in like a little crappy little hut. Libya dropped the dollar in 2009. Muammar Gaddafi raped by a pipe on a live TV while Hillary cackled. Syria dropped the dollar in 2006. I think he had to escape Syria, Bashar. Then Iran dropped the dollar in 2018. Are you beginning to see the pattern yet?
Pretty compelling. Now, here's the other side of this. We've talked about this. The Iranian parliament building is a pyramid. And one of the sides, I remember counting 33 windows. Is this whole thing a script? Did they come to Iran and say, look, we're going to launch running cars on water. We have the technology. Oil is going away. We're going to dismantle this. You can have a seat at the table with the 10 kings. I don't know. Are they just all Freemason shills, Luciferian shills? I can't get past why they would have a pyramid with 33 windows as their parliament building. But another just thing I wanted to look at, did Iran vaccinate their population during the pandemic? And they did. They poked their people. Now, it appears they didn't use the mRNA DNA defilement, but did they use nanotech technology? And they're working on mRNA technology as well. Is it just one big script? What do you think in the comments? Have my point of view, but I can see both sides of it. Because at the end of the day, it's a total takedown of oil to control. Getting rid of cash in Mexico. I mean, come on. All right, I like to end with scripture. And actually, I'm going to have one more slide after this, but just about all the chaos, the war on your food, the war on your travel, the war on the oil supply, inflation, World War III, sending your sons and daughters for war. I mean, it just keeps mounting up. Launching this AI beast system. Is AI running the world? Is that what we saw with the First Lady being subservient to this robot? AI robots be your future TSA, your future police? I had a dream about that. But let's read. And Jesus answered and said unto them, take heed that no man deceive you. Laura Loomer, talking to the CIA, going after free speech. Tucker Carlson doing an amazing job talking to somebody that talked about the post-trib rapture. The next week has somebody on talking about Noahide laws and how great it is. Really? What's his role? Is he in good faith? Question everything, my friends. But Psalm 46, 1 through 2, verses 1 and 2, God is our refuge and strength. This is our rallying cry, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea. That reminds me of the end of days, Revelation 16:20, and every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. I want to read Psalm 46, verses 1 and 2 again. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, will not we fear? Fear not. We have a sound mind. Though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, that parlays Revelation 16:20, and every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. I think that will literally happen. Now, I want to end with this. The ban on free speech. This is a right-left issue. Trump and Pam, when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, said we needed to censor free speech off the leftists and all this hate. And then the left is like, oh, we need to protect the people that are involved in massive sin for online bullying. So both sides are priming it. Here's Macron's partner talking about a new term. We need codes for free speech. And watch the First Lady smirk.
I do know that I am the United States, a country that I love very much. And here, we are the country of free speech. But I think that liberty does have some rules. We have to be free, but adapt to certain codes. So I believe in these codes. Too many young people are suffering, and they do not tell us, but they send signals, very strong signals from young people and teenagers. So it's up to us to answer them. Let's answer them all together. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be back.
She smiles. She knows the plan for AI to cut off your free speech. And then Melania is going to basically be calling for AI in your home to teach your kids, to program your kids, to spy on your kids, for these pedophile elites, for the Epstein class. What can go wrong? What can go wrong with a robot at the airport? Spying on you, knowing everything, taking your jobs. Both my parents were educators. High school educators, junior high educators. This is insanity.
Imagine a humanoid educator named Plato. Access to the classical studies is now instantaneous. Literature, science, art, philosophy, mathematics, and history. Humanity's entire corpus of information is available in the comfort of your home. Plato will provide a personalized experience, adaptive to the needs of each student. Plato is always patient and always available. Predictably, our children will develop deep critical thinking and independent reasoning abilities. The AI-powered Plato will boost analytics skills and problem solving and adapt in real time to a student's pace, prior knowledge, and even emotional state. The byproduct, a more well-rounded lifestyle for our children, freeing up time for being with friends, playing sports, and developing interests beyond school. A more complete person, but as discussed yesterday, we must balance our tech optimism with caution. The safety of our next generation is always paramount. Knowledge is the foundation of civilization, but although academia is interesting, business is compelling. For real growth in technology and education, I encourage you to bring the private and public sector worlds together.
Folks, they're getting the youth ready to accept the AI Antichrist, to worship artificial intelligence, for AI to be their best friend, for AI to guide them through life. That's what they're priming the youth to accept, the artificial image of the beast that will be hooked up to AI, that survived the head wound. God bless. Thanks for your support. Please share. Share old school letters, Post-it notes, conversations. God bless.